Spinjitzu is probably the most iconic part about LEGO Ninjago. When any normies think about LEGO Ninjago, they think, oh, it's the show about those LEGO people spinning in tornadoes. Spinjitzu has gone through many styles, because the show has gone through some different styles, and today I want to talk about them, the good and the bad. Let's begin. Spinjitzu is the first big thing we learn about in the pilots. It's a martial art move that all the ninja have to learn throughout the first episode. I think Spinjitzu works alright in this, although I'm not a huge fan of how rubbery it is, and I'm not a huge fan of how Jay's Spinjitzu look. It looks too thin and small. One problem I have with Spinjitzu is that sometimes it feels too small or big for the character. It should be about the same size as the character when they're doing Spinjitzu. The whole point about Spinjitzu is that it's supposed to look like a tornado, and the pilots succeed at showcasing Spinjitzu as looking like a tornado. One thing I think very few people talk about are the sound effects that Spinjitzu makes, because for some reason they're some of the most satisfying sounds I've ever heard.
Ice! Lightning!
It sounds very elegant and magical, which fits very well. Overall, I think Spinjitzu looks very good in the pilots. It has some problems, but that's something they can fix later on. In Season 1, the Spinjitzu looks relatively the same as the pilots, except they made every Spinjitzu the same size, which I do kinda like. It all looks very unified, especially when they're doing it as a group, and we no longer have the problem of the Spinjitzu looking smaller than the character. The only instance of Spinjitzu being smaller is when Lloyd is doing it, but that makes sense because, you know, he's a child. Spinjitzu stays relatively the same throughout the first 7 seasons. One thing I love about these seasons is that it really shows that anyone can learn Spinjitzu. I love the scene in Misfortunes Rising when the balloon just suddenly spins into a tornado, doing Spinjitzu. It surprises the characters and it surprises the audience, but from what we've learned of Spinjitzu, it makes sense. It's a martial art technique that anyone can learn. I think Skybound has my favorite iteration of Spinjitzu, even though they don't do it that much because, you know, they're in the sky and Airjitsu kinda took over for that period. We all know that for Day of the Departed and Hands of Time, the animation budget was very low, basically just $2. It definitely shows with the way they animate Spinjitzu. The main tornado is the same model, I presume, but the lighting is very flat and it doesn't look as appealing as it did before. I think Spinjitzu looks pretty good from Season 1 to 6, but in Day of the Departed and Hands of Time they kinda dropped the ball. From Sons of Garmadon to March of the Oni, they tried a new style of Spinjitzu, which I'm not really a fan of. They tried to blend the elements of the characters even more into the actual tornado, which ends up making some of their Spinjitzus not even look like a tornado anymore, which was the whole point. Out of all of them, I like Lloyd and Jay's the best. I honestly think they look even better than before, especially Lloyd's, but Kai, Cole, Zane's and Nia's look kind of ugly in my opinion. Kai and Zane's don't even look like a tornado anymore. Kai's just looks like a fireball now, which kinda loses the whole point of it being a martial art move and instead makes it feel more like just some elemental move they can because they have powers. I'm not going to sit there and say that the animation doesn't look good, but it fails at representing Spinjitzu. Anyway, I will gladly take the Oni Trilogy's version any day over the shit we got in Season 11, because what the fuck happened here? Anyway, starting out with positives, at least every Spinjitzu looks like a tornado. That's it for the positives. The lighting on these Spinjitzus look even worse than Day of the Departed and Hands of Time. They all look so flat and boring. I'd also argue that they're a little bit too overly animated. I know that's a little bit weird of me to say because, you know, this is a cartoon, but it loses that elegance that it once had. I think they should have saved the overly animated versions when they had the Scrolls of Secret Spinjitzu and leave the regular Spinjitzu alone, because having it be so animated and so all over the place, it doesn't really feel like Spinjitzu anymore. Another problem I have with it is that sometimes Spinjitzu feels way too big. I said previously that Spinjitzu should be the same size as a character, but now it's way too big. In some scenes they look twice as big, and that's not how it should work. Once again, that's fine when they're using secret Spinjitzu, but not the regular Spinjitzu. Now, honestly, I could forgive all of this, but the thing that really bugs me is the fact that they changed the sound effects. I am not a fan of the new Spinjitzu sound effects. It loses that elegance and magical feeling that it once had. Now it just sounds like any generic spinning sound effect. And this lasts for the rest of the show. With how much better Dragon's Rising's animation is compared to the Wild Brain era, I was hoping they'd fix Spinjitzu, and they kinda did. There's still some problems, but I'm honestly a little bit satisfied with how it is currently. They finally got the size right, and it now looks pretty good compared to the characters. The lighting on it now looks pretty good. It's back to actually looking a little bit elegant. But we still have the problem with being a little bit too overly animated, and honestly, I can't get used to the sound. The sound just sounds so wrong to me. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how it is right now, and I'm honestly fine if they don't change anything more. Anyway, that was my video on my thoughts on Spinjitzu. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll try and make more content. Bye!